great American patriot, Mr. Paul Stone, is the chairman and CEO of Colonial Metals Group. He's right here in studio with me, and he's got a new book out, or it's coming out.
Coming out end of March, yes. Great to be back, Larry.
Just as I was saying. 1971, the one decision that destroyed humanity. Wow. But we're still here. We're kicking.
I know. It's just a totally different version of humanity than what we're used to.
Give us a couple bullets on this, please.
If we just took real estate prices, right, from 1971 as an example, that's kind of a supply and demand driven thing, right? No demand, your neighborhood, no one wants to live there. Home prices tank or stay stagnant. Everyone wants to move there. Amazon's building a sorting facility right near that town. Bam, everyone wants to live there. Prices go flying, right? That's a good visual on a supply-demand priced asset. So if home prices in 1971 is 20 grand for a house, and look at this, your average income for America was $9,000. It only costs twice as much as your salary to buy a house. And today, our population has increased by 40%. Since 1971. So let's say we've doubled how many people could be in a line for a mortgage. So that would mean home prices, and they didn't build any new homes. So home prices would be 40 grand. Simple math. You just double demand, you double the price of the asset. But home prices today are $440,000. So we didn't have Canada and Mexico didn't move here. Right, so we must have just armed those buyers with tons more money to own more than one home.
Part of Mexico moved.
Yeah, right. Part of it.
But we'll leave that alone. It's a separate subject.
They're not buying homes. Maybe in California they're getting homes.
The government's giving
them away. So when we look at money printing, we look at flooding the world with liquidity. We're going to cause the cost of things to go up. Homes go up, stocks go up, eggs goes up, oil goes up. But incomes don't. So on the gold standard, your earnings will go up a lot faster than the cost of living. Off the gold standard, the cost of living goes up a lot faster than your earnings. So what does that do to a family? Well, it causes dad's earnings to not be enough to cover the cost for the family, so mom is forced into the workforce. Her primary job is deleted when she becomes a mother. And they all get to work, and they get to do whatever they want. I'm just talking mathematically speaking. What does 1971 have to do? How did it affect humanity? Well, moms aren't home raising babies. So now you have crops of humans that are coming up into the world that are very different than the crops of humans we've raised for 2,000 years. Egyptians never were like having women marching on the streets like Reagan, wanting equal rights and equal pay. I'm doing the same job as a man, pay me as much as the man. Reagan should have been mystified by that. It was just a few years earlier that Nixon changed the course of humanity. And then, as the costs go up, companies, what's a business supposed to do? What's WABC supposed to do? Increase revenue, cut costs. That widens out our profit margin, right? So the corporation's saying, we got to pay these American workers more money because they got to be able to afford to get here to the office, to the factory. So why don't we just get rid of those workers and we'll find cheaper labor? So the factories go overseas.
So the moral of the story is, with which I basically agree, Nixon took us off
financial reality.
Any vestiges of the gold standard, which was actually the dollar was linked to gold at a fixed price, and then other currencies around the world was $35 an ounce. Anyway, dollar was linked to gold, other currencies were linked to the dollar. The whole thing broke down.
Right.
And it was broken before then.
Yes, it was. They were printing money before.
Johnson started to break it. The last guy to really honor the gold standard was JFK, surprisingly. But anyway, you're right. Johnson, Vietnam War and all that. Nixon broke it. And basically prices have exploded since then. I agree. And they've gone up faster than wages. I agree with that completely.
Yeah, since 2010, Larry, corporate profits are up about 350%. Commodity prices are up about 400%. Wages are up 80%. Does that sound like drowning? Yeah, that's drowning. So that causes a stress. The last piece of the book, there's three main parts to it. The last thing is that causes misery and stress in America, and the mind would rather be at peace. So it tries to find ways to be at peace, but earnings-wise, you can't get on top of your bills. You're going into debt. Mom's at work, too. The kids are latchkey kids. That's a phrase that was invented in the 70s and the 80s. That had never existed before. Kids were never known as latchkey kids, where they let themselves in the door at 8 years old. So that misery, that stress that the mind can't get away from turns to drugs. Mm. We've never had a war on drugs before. I know Nixon started it when everyone's protesting the hippies were protesting the Vietnam War, but that wasn't en masse. That was just in your face all the time. The sit-ins, people burning joints on TV camera, like, we got to stop this stuff. That's not a good optic. But today it's everywhere. So think about the magic of a human being. Next time you're in rush hour traffic and you're pissed off, look up at the sky and understand there's a flame, pretty close to us that's 1.3 million times the Earth. And without that, we don't live. Remember how magical the human being is. Draw attention back to just how magical you are, and you need to be at peace. Who would ever want to anesthetize ourselves? That magic. It would be checked out during the day. The government is causing all of this, has been since Nixon. It started a little bit before, you're right, interest rates in 1960.
Has been since Woodrow Wilson.
Right. Well, since in 1960, interest rates were 1%. They're 6% in 1965, so they're already printing money past. They're ignoring
Woodrow
the gold
Wilson
standard.
was the guy that created the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, no,
Bad idea.
Right, you're putting
stay with gold.
People in charge of managing financial weather.
By the way, Trump has a real ear for that era. Let's pause for a little history here. Trump loves President William McKinley, who is a much greater president than the liberal historians will admit. He won the election in 1896. A lot of it was about keeping the dollar as good as gold. William Jennings Bryan didn't want that.
Wow.
Okay, so that's very important. And actually, and in those days, by the way, we had no income tax.
Right.
All the government money came from tariffs that protected American industry.
Right.
And Trump has a real ear for that era. He quotes McKinley. He sends me stuff on McKinley. Wow. I read the book, probably the best book on McKinley by Robert Murray. It's about 500, 600 pages. So my point is you should dial up Trump and talk to him about your gold case. I have talked to Trump, and I've heard Trump talk about gold. He's very interested in it. And one thing you can do, we're running out of time, you could sell as a starter gold-backed bonds, which would strengthen the value of the currency. That'd give you a little start. Anyway, Paul Stone, the name looks 1971, comes out in March, the one decision that destroyed humanity. Thank you, Mr. Paul Stone.
Thank you, Larry.
We appreciate it, kids.
Bless you, sir.